What else is involved in teaching literature? Teaching literature is also concerned with teaching students how to make literary interpretation and analysis.
How do you teach students literary interpretation and analysis?
It depends on how old the student is. When the student is young, by which I mean maybe all the way to high school graduate, all that you really want to do is to make the students understand what is happening in the story or in the poem. What is happening means literally who are there, who are the people involved, where is the thing happening, what are they saying, what kinds of comparisons or metaphors they are using. That's the literal level of the work. That's all you can expect from a student who is very young. But when you get to the college level, the student should already be looking at what the work means. Now, what does that mean? An author writes a work in order to say something. And this something is usually very significant for the survival of humanity. This meaning is often hidden by some figures of speech, some metaphorical language, some symbols, sometimes by words that are not usually used by regular people, and so on. The writers don't like to say things directly because many of the things they want to say cannot be said directly. So they start using very indirect means of expression. And the teacher must try and show the student how these means of expression are being used by the author.
Given the fact, however, that the literature teacher has the knowledge of different literary theories in his or her fingertips, then he can start making the students write their interpretations or analysis of certain poems, dramas, stories that they have read by the following process. First, I would suggest that the literature teacher first make the students read on their own before he gives a formal lecture, do their own research, and then in the class they can have an open forum to crystallize the ideas they have read, so they could compare also their insights into the theories that they have read from different references. Second, the literature teacher can ask the students to make them read samples of literary criticisms themselves, because there's no better substitute for reading good critics from their own interpretations. They can probably get insights and add new dimensions in the literary text they read. Then, third, I would make the students react to certain criticisms done by these critics, because the tendency of most students is to rely solely on the criticism of critics when they should know that they themselves can be critics if they only follow certain standards set in the different literary theories by the critics themselves. Then fourth, I would make them write their own analysis. And one effective way of doing this is making them write journals, especially after reading novels or short stories. In writing journals, they do not just summarize the stories they read, but react to character motivation, find certain symbolism in the text, and look for figurative language and react to the text as a whole. Then all these processes should be done in an anxiety-less filled classroom, because criticism is a very difficult process. That's why there's a saying that those who cannot write criticize, and those who criticize write. Finally, I would ask them to write their individual analysis of the texts that they have read, and ask them to compare these texts with their own classmates.
We have to determine the class we are going to teach. if we are dealing with first and second year, that is part of the general education program, then these people are not necessarily majoring in literature. And thus, the important thing there is to remember that we have to introduce them to language proficiency through the appeal of literature. Of course, when we deal with literature majors, then it is presumed that they know already the background. And so we zoom in on the specialization of what are different kinds of literature by country or by genre or by authors.
What else does the teaching of literature entail? It entails, moreover, teaching students to acquire and develop sensitivity, self-awareness, and greater understanding of the world and other people. The teaching of literature should provide students skills, attitudes, and abilities which they can use to become readers for life. Still, part of our task in teaching literature is to help students acquire the means for entering the writer's imagined world, as in stories like How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife, The Wedding Dance, or Waywaya. To understand the universality of themes and ideas in plays like The Portrait of the Artist as a Filipino, The World is an Apple, or Romeo and Juliet. To realize the significant human experience recounted or reflected in novels like Sense and Sensibility, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, or Without Seeing the Dawn. And to understand the human emotions and insights into life conveyed in poems like God Said, I Made a Man, like the Malave, or I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. In all these, we teach literature to help our students internalize the relevance of the ideas, events, and emotions dealt with in the literary texts to their own life. Before I give you a summary of what we have discussed so far, let's pause for a station break.